Have you ever found yourself at a roadblock with Dungeons and Dragons? Maybe you've thought about becoming a dungeon master or a game master, and you're not really sure what that entails. Or maybe even you've thought about what class may be the strongest and why they are the strongest.
And maybe you've played every class of Dungeons and Dragons, but you haven't played every subclass and you've overlooked some. Or maybe that new interesting character that you've daydreamed about for weeks isn't as fun to play in game. Here at Theoretical Insights of D&D, me and Rob are going to be discussing some insights and theories of Dungeons and Dragons. So let's get ready
And roll for insight.
You know, Sun Tzu once said, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. But
That's
today,
interesting.
Today on Crit Theory,
We're going to talk about the fighter. Where that's exactly what they do best. Fight. So, if you've played Dungeons and Dragons for a while, or if you're just now getting into it, and you've tried a couple of different classes, and you're not really happy with what you've played, say in a one-shot, or maybe a 2 or 3 session story. Say you played a wizard, and you're like, well, really all I do is cast spells. Or you played a cleric, and really all I do is heal people. The fighter class says so in the player's handbook, possibly the most diverse class in all of Dungeons and Dragons, because they can do literally all of it depending on the subclass that you choose, except I think, and I could be wrong, healing other people of the party outside of pouring a health potion down their throat.
and that's just as good sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest appeals of the fighter is that it's a down-to-earth kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, you can play all these, demigods, grandson of dragons, casting spells, or you got all these ancestors who give you strength and you can rage like a barbarian. But, if you just want to play a guy, the fighter, that's a guy. All these other ones, they're extravagant. Fighter, nah.
Well,
That's
also,
simple.
especially if you've only tried the spellcasters, because let's be honest, with Dungeons and Dragons, spellcasters are realistically the most attractive as far as, hey, I will expend this rock in this jar of jelly and I'll cast slow on somebody,
Mm-hmm.
But the fighter in and of itself, having the ability to give himself health, to action surge and take an extra action, the amount of damage that can be done, the amount of survivability that the class has, depending on how you build them and how you play them, you could be the greatest ally or the greatest threat to ever walk whatever world that your character's set in.
Oh, yeah. Fighters are,
Well, let's be honest, broken in a way.
They can be. If you're power gaming, fighter can easily be one of your go-to choices. Action surge just opens up the possibility of so many different paths you can go down in power gaming.
Yeah.
What are some tropes that, or characters or type of warriors that fit the fighter kind of theme? The first that pops in my mind is a gladiator.
Well, yeah, the gladiator will fit into the fighter as well, but there's so many things that could fit into a fighter.
A knight.
There's also the nobleman, maybe older in age, who's been protected by his family or his guard or whatever has been protecting him his entire life. And he's finally gotten to the place to where he's fed up with everybody holding him down, and he finds a group of people that he thinks he can trust. And the next thing you know, this 65-year-old man is out here slaying dragons with class, with dignity.
With 2 attacks per turn.
Yeah.
Or 4 if he's reached 20th level.
That's true.
Can we just talk about how insane that is, that fighter?
Yeah, of course. We've got to get into that, because realistically what we're doing is we're not only explaining what the class and the subclasses are, but we're kind of selling them too.
Yeah.
Because Dungeons and Dragons here in the past, 10 years has really picked up pace again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is thanks to Critical Role and the advertising that's been done for Wizard of the Coast and places like D&D Beyond that have given people the access that they didn't have at one point.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of people that are just now getting into it, like my wife or my friend who's away at college right now, they don't have an understanding, and it's really hard for them to try and figure out what they would like to do in game.
It really is. So I guess
And-
this kind of episode is kind of for more of the new players who are trying to figure out the classes, and this could even be for seasoned veterans of the game.
Yeah, because I've been playing now for 4 to 5 years, and there's some stuff still for not even the newer subclasses from, say, Grim Hollow or Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, that out of the player's handbook, some of the base level stuff that you get out of it for these classes that still surprise me to this day.
Oh yeah,
And
it's a book that keeps on giving.
it's mainly the fighter.
The fighter is amazing. Anyway, let's kind of get into the subclasses, because one thing about the fighter is, yes, it's simple, and that's where the customability comes from. But also these subclasses, they give a lot of options on which path you kind of want to go down. So let's kind of cover the things in the base player's handbook.
Yeah, well, before we get into the subclasses, the first two things that you might want to go over is what makes the fighter stand out so much from everybody else. Yes, the barbarian has his rage, sorcerer has his sorcerer points, warlock has eldritch blast, and wizards have a book. Fighters at first level have the ability to use an ability called Second Wind, and it is self-healing that equals 1d10 plus your fighter level. So at first level, it's only a maximum healing of maybe 11. However, you can use your bonus action, say you're at 15th level, and that's a maximum healing of 35. 35 health, even at 15th level, is a good chunk.
Yeah, the second wind ability is significant. It's not a full heal, but it's enough to keep you fighting.
Yeah, it's enough to keep you fighting, and it may be enough to where you could either save or distract the enemy from the rest of your party to where maybe they could stand the chance.
Another thing at first level, they get the fighting style, and that just
Yes.
you basically start off and get to customize, like, hey, you're playing a fighter. What kind of fighter do you want to play? Are you looking for range? Are you looking for the heavy armor? Are you looking for a guy who uses two hands on one weapon?
Yeah, and that's the thing that you need to keep in mind whenever you're building any kind of class. There are certain classes to where pretty much you're going to want to take the main saving throws that they've got, because without them being high, the class itself doesn't really work that well.
Yeah.
The exact opposite is true with the fighter. See, their main two are strength and constitution. However, they can be built to just about anything. If you wanted to take archery, you could max your dex over your strength. Or if you wanted to play a more roguish type, because they're proficient with all three levels of armor, light, medium, and heavy.
Mm-hmm.
You could play a roguish type. You could play a ranger type. You could play a dueling type. You could play a tank, front line, meat shield to distract the enemy from anybody else. Or you could be a straight up berserker from Norse mythology who goes in there with two hand axes and tears people apart.
You'd still have to wear armor, though. You don't get an unarmored defense like the barbarian.
that's true.
does. But anyway, that doesn't matter, because you start off having these proficiencies with the different
Almost
armors.
everything.
I think it is like almost like everything, like simple weapons, martial weapons, all the armors,
All the armors.
pretty much anything combat related you can use.
Yes.
It's really like one of those John Wick type characters. It's like not everyone can pick up a short sword or a long sword or a maul or a new set of armor right away and use it. Fighter, it doesn't matter. If it's a weapon and it's intended to kill or not, pick it up and use it.
That is very true. You could easily swing a halfling at a dragonborn and do damage with that halfling.
It's still an improvised weapon, and that's a
True.
feat for that. But anyway, let's talk about more about the customization with the subclasses, because you got three very distinct ones. You've got the champion, the battle master, and the Eldritch Knight.
Yeah, and those are the ones that are mainly in the player handbook, and we'll get into the ones that have come out afterwards in the next episode, but we really want to focus on the main three, the ones that people will probably see more often and be more leaning towards, because really they're easier to play, I think. Champion's extremely simple. The battle master can get complicated. The Eldritch Knight, of course, keeping up with wizard spells, where I originally thought they were warlock spells, having to keep up with any kind of component can get a little iffy.
That is true.
For a new player.
Let's talk about that champion. The champion's just you're taking a fighter and you're making him more of a fighter.
Yeah, because now, granted, this happens at 3rd level. Okay, so if you're playing Milestone, it could take you forever. XP, you could hit 3rd level in a matter of 2 or 3 sessions, depending on what all you do and what all you fight. And it's all the way up to DM discretion as to if they're going to give you experience points for anything other than a battle. But just right off the bat, at 3rd level, because everybody feels amazing when they roll that natural 20 or they get a critical. At 3rd level, when you first choose the champion, you can score a critical strike on both a natural roll of 19 and 20. So you now have an extra way to do critical damage.
You turn your crit chance from 5% to 10%, pretty much.
Yeah.
You double the ability to crit, and that is a very powerful ability.
And that's not always a bad thing.
No.
A lot of people, and I've talked and heard people talk, some DMs saying, I wish they hadn't have chosen the champion, because now they're being able to crit on an 18, 19, or 20. You get the 18 at a higher level. That they're doing so much damage that now I'm having to buff everything, and it's hard to get it under control, but the champion is good at fighting. It's not very good at much else. It all depends on how you build it. Because let's be honest, when you choose a champion subclass, fighting is what you want and need to focus on.
You really do. You really get honed in on the physical aspect, because at level 7, the next ability, I believe, is Remarkable Athlete.
Yes.
It says starting at 7th level, you can add half your proficiency bonus, round up to any strength, dex, or constitution check that you make that doesn't already use your proficiency bonus.
And that's going into, remember, it said strength, dexterity, or constitution. So you do not have to be a hand-to-hand fighter to play a champion.
No. You could definitely... And the champion really fits kind of that... To me, it fits the... in a way, that gladiator type role.
Honestly, who I think of as the champion as far as any kind of TV show or movie, and I didn't think about it until now, is Legolas from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, how he was both skilled with range and hand-to-hand combat.
That is true. And also, the Remarkable Athlete says, in addition, when you make a running long jump, the distance you can cover increases by a number of feet equal to your strength modifier. You don't see a whole lot of improved jumping abilities.
No, usually those are spells or like a ring of jumping or anything like that.
Jump, I think long strider could affect it as well.
Maybe. I'll have to look at that.
Fly, even.
Yes.
Simple D&D spell.
If you want to get down to the technicalities, if you jump and then cast fly, it's still a jump.
But honestly, I just like the image of the parties like in a dungeon, and there's this huge cavern, and they're being chased by this monster that they are in no way prepared to fight. And they're like, how are we going to get over this cavern? The fighter just long jumps it, and he makes it. And he's like, why are you guys waiting? Come on.
Yeah. Now, the Remarkable Athlete is really good, but when a fighter hits 10th level, specifically in the champion martial archetype, you can choose a second option from the fighting style class features. So that's your archery, defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, protection, or 2-weapon fighting, to where not only could you be extremely good at archery, or while you're wielding a melee weapon with one hand and no other weapon, you get a +2 to damage rolls with that weapon. From dueling, you can do even more. You could be good at archery. You could get the +1 to AC because of defense. You could do great weapon fighting. That if somebody gets close to you while you're using your bow and you hit them with a longsword, maybe if you roll low on your damage die, guess what? Re-roll it. You might get another 1, or you might get that long sought after 6.
That's true. When it comes down to it, just based off the player's handbook, it doesn't seem like a whole lot of the options are able to mesh well, except for like defense and pretty much anything else,
Yeah.
or protection and anything else.
You can...
Because if you pick archery and you focus on like a bow, really the only other thing you probably want to be taking is defense, because the other ones involve kind of like the different type of weapon you're going to be using. But, there's also, I believe it was Tasha's or Xanathar's that released like some more fighting styles.
I know maybe both of them did. I know Tasha's did.
I'm not sure of exactly which one, but there's like a thrown weapon fighting, which is you could definitely use that with a 2-weapon fighting. I could see someone busting out 2 hand axes, chopping them down, throw one to a far off enemy. So when it comes to fighting styles and you come to that additional one that you pick, it pays off in the end to kind of plan ahead of where you want your character to go.
And it also goes into what is your party doing well, and where are they struggling.
Yeah, I mean, there's also nothing wrong with you playing an archer or you playing a great sword wielder, and you realize like no one in the party has ranged attack besides like the spellcasters, and you only got one spellcaster, and he goes down every fight. And there's nothing wrong with picking up the archery to
and
be
maybe if you started with archery and you realize, wow, these guys are getting to me pretty easily, and once they're within 5 feet, I'm kind of stuck. Then, in that instance, you might would be able to take up dueling with your dexterity being so high, because archery is, ranged attacks are based off your dexterity.
Yeah.
You could have maybe a rapier or a short sword, something with the finesse to where you can use your dexterity as your modifier for the attack and damage rolls, and you're also getting a +2 to that damage roll just from having that, to where you're still capable hand to hand.
That's true. 15th level, though.
This is where the big boys play. Now, a lot of campaigns don't get this high, and it's unfortunate.
I've been at this level one time. But
yes.
Man, it's powerful. And when you get to this level, you feel almost like a demigod. Because you essentially are. Yeah,
because starting at 15th level, not only can you score a critical on a roll of 19 or 20, but also 18. So now you have
a 15% chance to land a critical hit, which is a hit no matter what.
Yes.
Lands automatically, does more damage, feels awesome whenever you do it.
And could really swing the tide of a battle, especially against the BBEG.
Oh, yeah. You bust out that crit on an 18. The champion is just that fighter. I like how it takes the... this champion just basically builds off of itself, really. And I like that about it. All these other classes, they have kind of, or subclasses, they have like a path that kind of branches out. The champion is just like, oh, here's an improved critical. Here's another fighting style. Oh, here's your improved critical.
Yeah, and it's just setting the fighter up to be more useful in combat, because let's be honest, most of the time, you're going to be rolling low. There's a 50% chance that it's going to be 10 and lower.
That's true.
So you can always expect, be like, hey, I'm going to pick up this die and I'm going to roll it. And that's an 8. That's going to happen 50 or possibly more 50% of the time.
Let's get into the last ability from the subclass of the champion.
The last one is extremely useful.
At level 18, at the start of each of your turns, you regain hit points equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier if you have no more than half of your hit points left. You don't gain this benefit if you have 0 hit points, though. This, when it comes down to it, the Survivor, this is an ability that the Troll has that makes it so deadly. The regeneration. If you're playing at this level, 18th, you're probably going to have a Constitution score of 20.
At least.
Well, that's the max you can go unless you get some
special things. I've seen some strength and dexterity scores at 21, 22.
There's like magic items. I think that's really the only way to do it. But anyways, at that's 10 hit points per turn.
Per turn. And in a long fight, if you've got, say, if you're up against the big bad end game, he's doing, say, 32 points of damage as an average every turn. At the end of it, he's only doing 22, and that can make a difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if you're at that level with the Constitution modifier of +5.
Yes.
Your hit points are going to be through the roof, and that just brings it down. In a way, the champion feels like they looked at the barbarian and they were like, "Hey, I like how he takes less damage,
Yeah,
and does more damage. Let's just kind of flip it around and turn it into a fighter."
well, and there's also the fact that being able to have that survivor, if your campaign gets you up to 18th level, or heck, even if it's a one shot that takes
true.
up 1 or 2 sessions, it takes the load off the healer.
It really does.
Because I've played a healer, it is not easy playing a healer, because once everybody's taking damage, you're having to pick and choose who you heal, and it's not a good feeling to say in your mind, he's more useful than you.
That's true. Now, let's get into this Battle Master.
Battle Master is the ones who want to completely control the battlefield and how it controls the flow of battle.
I like the Battle Master because every time I look at it, I'm thinking this is a man who knows his weapon in and out, knows the fighting style. This is the expert with the blade. You get combat superiority dice and maneuvers. You basically get to do things that, in a way, feels like everyone should be able to do.
Yeah, in a way,
but tripping attack, just hit for the legs.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. Not even so much with tripping the legs, but more like maneuvers, to where when you hit, you can say, "Hey, buddy, come closer to me, since you're on my side." It literally turns the fighter into the leader of the party during that fight.
Yeah.
Or any fight from there on out, to where they have that beacon to where, like, how are we going to do this?
I played a monk one time who took the feat that gives you maneuvers, and the one that I picked was Commander Strike, and you can basically forgo one of your attacks and use a bonus action to look at one of your teammates and say, "Hey, I want you to make an attack on this guy."
Yeah.
And they get to add the dice that you roll for that Commander Strike to their damage. And there's so many different other ones, like, Fainting Attack. You have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature this turn. If that attack hits, add the superiority dice to the attack roll's damage.
Now, the only downside of that, of course, you don't get to get that option until 4th level, is that you can take that feat
3rd level, not 4th.
At 3rd level, 4th level. Okay, you get that, and you also get at 3rd level more just to round this whole class out, or starting to mold it into exactly how useful it can be. You get proficiency with one type of artisan's tool of your choice.
Yeah, and that is when I kind of read that, it's one of those flavor things that you kind of have to kind of play into the trope for it to really kind of make sense. This is the Battle Master is a man who looks at war as art. This isn't like the guy who's picked up a sword just to go fight a monster. This is a guy who's like, warfare is my lifestyle.
He read The Art of War and took it seriously.
He read it and he's like, this makes sense. Yeah, I think I'm going to pick up cobbler's tools now.
Yeah.
On to the next ability of it, though. I believe it's Know Your Enemy, right?
Yeah, so starting at 7th level, when you spend at least 1 minute observing or interacting with another creature outside of combat, you can learn certain information about its capabilities compared to your own. The DM has the discretion to tell you if the creature is your equal, superior, or inferior in regarding to two characteristics, and that is your strength, dex, con, armor class, your current health, total classes of levels, and the fighter class.
This is one of those things that you're always going to have those seasoned veteran players who are going to know the armor class and hit points of a monster at any given time.
Yeah.
Like, but this is one of those for like the new guys. They're like, well, I don't know anything about this monster, but I want to know, how strong is he? How fast is he? What's his con at?
How do I stack up against him, and will me and my 4 companions be able to do something about it?
You're really kind of like looking like, what are the weaknesses and what are the advantages? This is you're ascertaining information before a fight even happens, so you can control the fight even better.
Now, the only thing about, and we'll get into it in a little bit because we still have 10th level and 15th level to go through. The only thing really that the champion subclass has over the Battle Master is it gets another class feature at 18th level where Battle Master runs out at 15th.
But still, nonetheless, the Battle Master's 10th level ability is impressive. At 10th level, the superior dice, they turn from a D8 to a D10.
Yes.
And honestly, anytime that you can turn one dice into another, it's always fun.
Well, I stand corrected because if you read this, the improved combat superiority, at 18th level, they go from a D10 to a D12.
Yeah. And
they don't really gain much of anything.
It just kind of builds upon itself.
It gives an extra 2.
And honestly,
and
D12,
it feels nice. It feels nice to roll a D12.
It really does. How many times do you roll a D12 in your life?
Well, any kind of barbarian using a great axe.
That's true. But, a fighter could use a great axe.
Exactly.
But, great sword's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Battle Master is fun, and it just adds even more layers to the customized ability with all the different maneuvers.
Yes, and at 15th level, when you roll initiative but have no superiority dice remaining, you gain 1 superiority dice. So if you've just gotten out of a fight and it was a long and hard fight, you've spent all your superiority dice, and on the way back to town or setting up camp, something pops up out of the bushes or somebody knocks your door down, and you're like, well, crap. Now I've got to be able to fight. The second you roll initiative, you gain at least 1 back to where you can do some of your maneuvers. And we'll get into those a second. If we went into detail about all of them, we'd be here for hours.
Oh, yeah. There's way too many to cover, but they even released like more with Tasha's.
Yeah.
You've got like how many in the player's handbook?
There are 16 in the player's handbook to choose
from. And then there's more with Tasha's. It's a ridiculous amount that just adds that.
This is really for somebody who's wanting to do the full RPG build for their character if they choose a fighter.
This is the guy who's like, I know exactly.
Highly customizable.
I know exactly the character that I want to play, and these are the routes I'm going to take.
And to start on those maneuvers, you have Commander's Strike, Disarming Attack, Distracting Strike, Evasive Footwork, Feinting Attack, which Jeremiah talked about earlier a little, Goading Attack, Lunging Attack, Maneuvering Attack, Menacing Attack, Parry, Precision Attack, Pushing Attack, Rally, Riposte, Sweeping Attack, and Trip Attack.
And they're pretty self-explanatory. The parry, you're parrying. Trip attack, you trip somebody. Sweeping attack, you can hit multiple guys in a row. The Battle Master controls the combat, and that's where he shines.
Yes.
Now, fighters, they're not spellcasters.
No.
But like any good martial class, they have a subclass which gains them access to magic.
Yep.
Let's go into that Eldritch Knight. Now, I actually have a funny story about the Eldritch Knight. When I first started playing D&D, or really kind of got back into it, I didn't know that the Eldritch Knight was a subclass. And a friend of mine was talking to me about a power build of a Warlock Hexblade and an Eldritch Knight. And I didn't know what an Eldritch Knight was, so I just thought it was a new class. And then come to find out it was a subclass for the fighters. And honestly, it is pretty nice. I've always liked those characters who are spell swords. They got the blade and the magic. They can light their sword on fire or, cast a shield spell or something like that. And the Eldritch Knight is a very good magic subclass for a martial class. At third level, you get spell casting. And you get another ability, Weapon Bond. But let's get into that spell casting.
Well, more specifically, it's not the sorcerer spell list or the warlock spell list. It's the wizards.
Yeah.
So there are some very, very powerful spells in the wizards spell list. Now, granted, you'll only get up to a 4th level spell, but you'll have access to Lightning Bolt and Fireball.
Yeah.
Which are the 2 main choices for a wizard.
Yeah. Any self-respecting wizard's either got Fireball or Lightning Bolt,
Wizards, if I'm not mistaken, can learn the spell Misty Step, correct?
It depends. See, here's the thing about the Eldritch Knight. Rules as written, and this is a rule that I say don't worry about it. Eldritch Knights can only learn spells from the Abjuration or Evocation schools. And I don't think Misty Step is either of those.
No, it is a conjuration.
Yeah, because you're conjuring yourself somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I saw that and I'm like, I don't like that, but it does make sense. Evocation and Abjuration, those are the schools for defense and offense, and that's what the fighter's really about.
Yes.
You at 3rd level you get 2 cantrips, and you get 3 spells known, and you get 2 1st level spell slots.
And the thing is cantrips are still based off of your level.
Yeah, that's true.
So say you decide to take Poison Spray, because as a cantrip, for what it does, the damage it does, and for the area that it covers, Poison Spray is really one of the best, followed only lower than maybe Eldritch Blast. Really.
Eldritch Blast is good. It's got that, you can hit multiple with it. But Poison Spray is pretty powerful. I don't think it's in the player's handbook. I think it was in a different...
It is.
It is?
It is 1d12 poison damage, and when you reach 5th, 11th, and 17th, that will go up to 2, 3, and 4d12. That's a potential at 17th level Eldritch Knight of 48 damage.
With a cantrip.
With a cantrip.
Now, here's the other ability that I like at their 3rd level, Weapon Bond. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not fully familiar with it.
They do an hour ritual with a weapon in their reach, okay? And once they've bonded with that weapon through this ritual, they cannot be disarmed with that weapon unless they're incapacitated. If they're on the same plane of existence with their weapon, they can summon that weapon as a bonus action, and it teleports into their hand. They can have 2 of these weapons at any time.
The Pact of the Blade and the Eldritch Knight have a lot in common.
Yeah. This is a... we can get into the multi-class and power game, all this, but this alone is just awesome because no longer do you have to play a thrown weapon-based fighter and have to go and retrieve your weapon.
Yes.
It's, I throw my axe, it's back.
Yeah, and all you have to do is expend the bonus action. And the thing is you don't have to bring your weapon back unless you absolutely wanted it for some reason by the end of your turn, because then you could bonus action surge, bonus action bring your weapon back, and attack again.
Yeah, definitely. Now, War Magic is the next subclass ability or subclass feature.
This right here is what makes the Eldritch Knight deadly.
When you use your action to cast a cantrip, you can make 1 weapon attack as a bonus action.
So in other words, if you were the fighter, Eldritch Knight, who's sitting there using a great sword or a maul or anything like that, one of those that rolls multiple dice, that way you're always going to get at least 2 damage.
Mm-hmm.
You can make that 2d6 weapon roll after having spent your cantrip for something like Poison Spray or Chill Touch.
Yeah. Or, if I'm not mistaken, this may be one of the instances where True Strike kind of comes in handy.
Yes.
Now, of course, True Strike is one of those controversial spells, and we can get into that all day long. But I could really see True Strike come in real in handy with this, where, you give yourself advantage on the first... Well, no, it actually activates on your next turn, so it wouldn't do anything for that turn.
Still, you would be able to make a weapon attack afterwards.
Still, yeah. So, True Strike still may actually be useless. Now, Eldritch Strike.
This is when it starts getting interesting.
This is when it turns into, you got the Battle Master learning your defenses and all this. The Eldritch Knight's just saying, nah,
We're going to take those away.
You don't have any defenses. Look at me. I am the damage now.
Yeah, because at 10th level, you learn how to make your weapon strikes undercut a creature's resistance to your spells. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, that creature has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes against a spell you cast before the end of your next turn.
Yeah, and
especially in higher level play, when some of the enemies are going to have more modifiers, that's extremely useful.
Definitely. And I like how it says before the end of your next turn. It gives you that turn to, you could do 2 attacks in one turn if like you're using 2 weapons, or you've got a cantrip that it does in a saving throw, and you can like save a big saving throw spell for the next turn.
Yeah. Now the next class feature at level 15 brings in a little bit of mobility, and really the fighters are not overly known for their mobility. A lot of them are played with this strength con based meat shield high damage.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. They're there to punch somebody in the face until they just eventually die. But on the arcane charge, when they hit 15th level in this subclass, you gain the ability to teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that you see when you use your action surge, and you can teleport before or after your additional action. They get a free Misty Step.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's based off your action surge, and I think you get another action surge at later levels.
By, let's see here.
17th level.
Yes.
At 17th level, which is just 2 levels away from that, you can do that 2 times per long rest.
Yeah.
And that's
like I said, a free Misty Step.
Yeah, and teleportation is such a useful mode of transporting in combat because no opportunity attacks, difficult terrain.
There is being able to do a ton of damage. There is being able to soak up a ton of damage. But when you bring in mobility,
it changes
the
everything.
more you move and the quicker you can do so, the harder you are to deal with.
You also got to think about this. This really adds into... See, it's not saying you can teleport after you do an additional attack. It's an additional action.
Yes.
If you're trying to run away, you can action dash, action surge, take the dash action again, teleport 30 feet. You've now got
90 feet.
90 feet of movement. Plus that 30, that is 120 feet of movement in one turn. And that is at the disadvantage range of most spells and weapons, or a good portion of them. And that really changes the game. Now, Improved War Magic, which is the 18th level feature, it's not, I wouldn't say it's too powerful, but it's definitely good.
Well,
it turns from when you cast a cantrip, it's whenever you cast a spell, you can make a one weapon attack as bonus action.
And that doesn't mean that you lose the ability to use an attack after casting a cantrip.
No.
But what that does mean is that you can now cast Fireball on the group of enemies at a little bit of a distance that's terrorizing your party from, with ranged attacks.
Yeah.
And then the bigger guy that's in front of you standing there with a shield and a longsword, you can smack the crap out of him too.
Yeah. It just gives you the ability to do more damage because leveled spells are always going to be more powerful than cantrips.
Yeah. And really what people need to get into their heads is that barbarians can do a lot of damage. Rangers can do a lot of damage, especially with Hunter's Mark and stuff like that. And we'll get into that when we talk about the Ranger.
Yeah, those debuffs and stacks and targeting.
The spellcasters can do great things with their spells, with buffing, debuffing, and just straight damage. But when it comes to damage overall, the only 2 classes that come to mind are Rogue and Fighter.
At the end of the day, if you got a long combat, I want the Fighter on my team.
Yeah, because really, if it wasn't for sneak attack, Rogue wouldn't stand a chance.
That's true. I think that wraps it about up for this episode about fighters. Let's cover those next subclasses next week. How about that?
Yeah, what do you think we'll start off with? I think we go a little eastern and cover the samurai.
That does sound like a good idea. We'll catch you next time at the Crit Theory.